Gen X is in trouble, and I am part of Gen X. Yeah, so Americans born between 1965 and 1980, which makes them between age 45 and 60, we are in trouble. You see, about 40% of Gen X households have saved zero for retirement. Yeah, you heard that right.
America has a retirement crisis and it's only getting worse. 80% of households with older adults, about 47 million, are financially struggling today and are at risk of falling into economic insecurity, meaning that they can become unhoused, they don't have access to proper health care, and they have food insecurity.
So, retirement in America is starting to look like a real crisis, and the numbers behind it are honestly pretty alarming, right? Right now, nearly half of Americans don't even have retirement saving at all. And for those who do, the median saving is shockingly low. In some cases, under $1,000 when you include people with nothing saved. And at the same time, people believe they need around 1.4 to 1.5 millions to retire comfortably in 2026, and most are nowhere near close to that. And even for those approaching retirement, the situation isn't much better. Some data show that people in their late 50s or early 60s have only around $30,000 saved, which is nowhere near enough to sustain decades without income. And when you zoom out, the bigger picture gets even more concerning. Only about 1 in 3 workers feel confident they'll be able to retire comfortably at all. So this isn't just a future problem, it is something that already happening. People are delaying retirement, relying on more social security, or just hoping things somehow worked out. In this video, we're going to take a look at both data and real story from people dealing with this right now, because behind all of those numbers are real lives, real stress and a lot of uncertainty about the future. And yeah, let's get into it.
Gen X grew up with eras of economic shifts and uncertainty, from the gas shortage in the 70s to enduring years of inflation and recession, and also living through the Great Recession. Many Gen Xers are finding that the traditional retirement savings like pensions, 401ks, and even Social Security might not be enough to secure a comfortable retirement. And with stagnant wages, rising healthcare costs, and increased life expectancy, some Gen Xers are realizing that they need a new plan.
Most people will not retire, or they will have to majorly downgrade their lifestyle when they do. This is because they are dependent off of a company or government pension alone, which little do they know, come the age of retirement, it's not going to keep up with the cost of living, and they will not be able to afford their day-to-day expenses. Instead of waiting for a certain age to retire, what you should be doing is planning ahead. Retirement is not an age, it is a number. Typically, your retirement number is calculated in this way. Your total expenses for a year times 25 is the amount you need in a portfolio in order to retire comfortably. The sooner you reach this number, the sooner you will be able to retire. For example, let's say, including inflation, you intend to spend $200,000 gross a year. Gross is before taxes. You will need a portfolio of $5 million in order to retire. And yes, when you're withdrawing from an RRSP, you will be taxed, and that's why I included the tax in this number. After taxes in Quebec, that'll leave you with $115,000, which will give you about $10,000 a month, which is pretty reasonable in my opinion, considering how expensive it is to live in Canada currently, and the prices are just going to keep increasing over time. Do you see a company or government leaving you with this much at the age of retirement? Probably not. This is why we have to plan ahead for ourselves. Stop leaving these important things in the hands of the government or some company that doesn't give two shits about you. Take care of yourself, plan ahead.
Yeah, this clip is blunt, but it's not wrong, right? And that's what makes this uncomfortable. The idea that most people won't retire sounds extreme at first, but when you actually look at how expensive lives have become, it starts to feel a lot more realistic, right? For a long time, people were told, work hard, stay loyal to a company, and contribute to your pension, and you'll be taken care of. But that version of retirement doesn't really exist anymore, and a lot of people start to realize that way too late in their early 50s or 60s, when there's just not too much time left to adjust. And that's where the fears come from, right? Not just retiring later, but retiring and realizing that you can't actually afford to stop working. And the retirement is a number, not an age idea is actually one of the most important shifts in thinking, because retiring at 65 doesn't mean anything if you don't have the money to support your lifestyle. That formula that person mentioned, your yearly expenses multiplied by 25, is based on what's known as the 4% rule. I'm pretty sure everybody know about that. The idea is that if you withdraw about 4% of your portfolio each year, your money can last long term without running out, right? So if you want to spend 200K a year, which is crazy amount to be honest, you need around $5 million invested. And that's where things start to hit people, because most people don't even come close to that number, right? Not because they're irresponsible, but wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. And saving at that scale is extremely difficult when you're dealing with rents, bill, debt, and everything else, right? Especially right now with the crazy gas prices as well. And the bigger issues here is reliance, right? A lot of people are still depending on the system that were built for a completely different economy, company pension, government support, things that used to go so much further than they do today. But reality now is that those alone often aren't enough to maintain the same lifestyle. And when inflation keep pushing costs higher over time, that gap only get worse. So when this person really saying isn't just save more, is the responsibility has shifted. Whether people like it or not, more of the burden is now on individual to plan, invest, and prepare earlier than ever before. And that's the part that's tough, right? Because people aren't just trying to live today anymore, they're trying to survive today and somehow have to build enough for the future that keep getting more expensive.
Let's take a look at how much money my 401k has lost in the last month. So I just logged in a few seconds ago and I saw the damage. It's pretty bad. For 1 month, I lost, in dollar amount, $31,434.22, which is 13.5%, which is crazy. To put it into perspective, that's like 10 of these couches. If I bought 10 couches and set it on fire, that's how much money I lost in 1 month. And yeah, I'm a tech bro, so I don't really know about finance. I just invest in index funds and 401k and all of that, but that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
That is terrifying to me. I mentioned earlier that there's a retirement crisis on our hands, and it's just getting worse. And there's two big elements that'll prove that. 50% of Americans do not participate in a retirement plan today. That is terrifying to me. And guess what? We're all going to get old. We're all going to not be able to work. Social Security we can't count on. Pensions are gone. Businesses are tightening their belts and contributing less to 401ks. You have to empower yourself to build your retirement, and you've got to start somewhere. And that can be as simple as doing your contribution. And number two, it's getting harder and harder to retire comfortably. So pre-COVID, Northwest Mutual did a survey of about, I think, 20,000 Americans and asked them, how much do you think you need to retire comfortably? And this was 2018. And those folks said on average $550,000. They resurveyed those people last year. Guess where it jumped to? Staggering 1.8 million now. So almost tripled. Wow. In a short time. But where are we going to be in 5 more years? And that's just perspective of people thinking, oh, I need that to retire comfortably. You've got to start somewhere, and you've got to know the landscapes.
America has a retirement crisis, and it's only getting worse. 80% of households with older adults, about 47 million, are financially struggling today and are at risk of falling into economic insecurity, meaning that they can become unhoused, they don't have access to proper health care, and they have food insecurity. So what are Republicans suggesting as the solution to this problem? They want to raise the retirement age to 70, even though life expectancy has been falling in America. As of 2021, the average life expectancy in the US is 76 years old. So if you're lucky, you get to retire by 70, struggle financially for 6 years, and then drop dead. But that's not all. Not only do they want the older generation working as long as possible, they also want the younger generation to get to work as soon as possible. Florida just passed a law allowing teenagers to work more than 30 hours a week, 6 days a week, without even a lunch break, and they can do this while they're going to school. In France, workers have been burning the country to the ground because they're trying to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Meanwhile, in America, we are being gaslit. with propaganda like this, where we're being told that employees over 65 are working more than ever, which is a silver lining and great for the bottom line. And let me be clear, this is not for the employees' bottom line, it's for the corporations. For those of us who are older, we're trying to scramble and save and invest as much money as we can so that we don't have to retire into poverty. As for the younger generations, they've already wised up to this. They know it's going to take a revolution. It's going to take drastic action. They're going to need to boycott, strike, bring back unions in order to change the dynamic here, because the status quo doesn't change voluntarily by the people at the top. Change has to happen with pressure, and it has to be sometimes done by force.
This is not a good sign, America. It's only first quarter 2026, and there's a record high withdrawals from 401ks. Times are tough. People are running out of their money. 36% who dipped into their 401k is to avoid evictions and foreclosure. Does that mean the housing market is a crash? No. If you read the fine print, it says only 6% of 401k participants are withdrawing their money. And out of that 6%, 36% are withdrawing to avoid evictions and foreclosures. But if you know anyone who's struggling to make their mortgage payment, have them call their mortgage servicer first and ask for mortgage forbearance. With government loans, you can get up to 12-month mortgage forbearance. For conventional, up to 6-month to 12-month, depending on the servicer. I would do that before withdrawing from 401k. Please share this information and follow the page. But for those of you guys who are buying a home today, here is the nationwide average mortgage interest rates. Remember, these rates are just a ballpark. Give your lender a call so you can get an accurate quote.
Yeah, this is one of those clips where the headline sounds small, but the meaning behind it is huge. Record withdrawal from 401ks in the first quarter of 2026. That's not just statistic, right? That's a warning sign, because people don't touch their retirement account unless they have to. That's supposed to be untouchable money, that future security. So when people start dipping into it early, it usually means something is going wrong in the present, right? And the fact that the big portion of those withdrawals, are to avoid eviction or foreclosure, that tell you this isn't about bad financial habit. It's about people trying to stay afloat. Now, to be fair, the clip does clarify something important, right? It's not 36% of all Americans pulling out money. It's 36% of the 6% who actually made withdrawals, right? So overall, it's still a relatively small group. But here's the key point, right? Trend matter more than totals. If, more people than ever are tapping into retirement saving this early in the years, that signal financial stress building under the surface. Using 401k like an emergency fund is one of those last resort because it comes with, penalty, tax, and long-term consequences. You're not just losing money today, you're losing future growth as well if you think about it. And that money could have compound for years, so pulling it out might solve the short-term problem, but it can also, create a much bigger long-term gap. And this is where it connects to the bigger, retirement crisis, right? People are being forced to choose between surviving today and preparing for tomorrow. And in most cases, survival wins, right? So even if the housing market doesn't crash, even if the economy looks fine on the surface, situations like this, quietly weaken people's financial future, because every early withdrawal today is one less cushion for retirement later. And that's how the problem built up over time, not all at once, but, slowly, right? People fall behind, dip into saving, delay investing, and before they know it, retirement becomes something they can't afford. And, the advice about mortgage, forbearance is actually important too, because there are, options before going nuclear and pulling, from retirement account. A lot of people just don't know about them or wait too long to ask. But the bigger takeaway is this, right? When people are using retirement money to keep a roof over their head, that's not just a personal issue, that's a sign of a much deeper economy pressure building underneath everything.
When I see a Gen Xer and they think they're doing really, really well with their $300,000 to $500,000, I'm like, how are you going to retire? You have 10 years. If you just continue to do what you're doing, and you're making more than $100,000 a year, because most Gen Xers are at this point, how are you going to live? Because groceries aren't going down, electricity's not going down, the water bill's not going down, specials aren't going down. How are you going to live on less? My
And
parents
why
do
would you want to?
exactly. I don't want to. But guess what happens when your children were born?
One of the most difficult things about being Gen X and growing up with aging parents is seeing where you're at in your own personal life, right? And then seeing what 30 years in the future is going to look like for you. I know for me, it's been super difficult to like wrap my mind around how hard I'm working, what I'm doing in order to just like feed my family, in order to have that better future, but also seeing that future through the lens of my parents. And it's very difficult to see like, how does this equate? Because for the longest time, I always looked at retirement as this golden pie in the sky sort of ideal that is out there that like one day I would get to. One day if I just worked really hard, I would get to. And I am on that path, but seeing what that actually means is like mind-boggling to me, because there's maybe, if you're lucky, like 10 years where you're active wanting to do stuff and that you're not like cranky. So I don't know, is anyone else going through this? Because like it's interesting.
It is really messed up, y'all, how there are so many people out here that work hard and have worked their entire lives and they still cannot retire. And it is not because they were reckless with their money, y'all, but because all they were ever taught to do was to save, how to depend on these pensions and these 401ks. And so now they're hitting their 50s and their 60s and they're realizing that there is barely enough money in there for them to even survive. And that is why I started my money mentorship, so that you can get the clarity that you need before that becomes your story. So if you haven't signed up yet, check out the link in my bio.
Yeah, this one is the one that hit on the different levels, because it's not about bad decision. It's about people doing everything they were told to do, right? And it's still not working out. You work hard, you save your money, contribute to your 401k, you trust the system, and that formulas a lot of people follow for decades, right? So when someone reaches their 50s or 60 and realize that this might not be enough, that is not just financial stress. That's a complete shift in what they thought their life was going to look like. And what this person pointed out is something a lot of people are just starting to wake up to. Saving alone is not enough anymore. Back then, saving money in the bank or relying on pension could actually carry you through retirement. But today, inflation eat away at those savings, right? Pension are less common nowadays. I'm not sure if they even exist anymore. And 401k depend heavily on how much you contribute and how well your investment perform. And let's be real, right? Most people weren't maxing out their 401ks every single year, and I'm guilty of that as well, right? And they're raising families, paying rent, mortgage, and dealing with life. So when they're finally looking at their retirement account, it's not that they fell, it's just that the system required more than what they were realistically able to give. And this is where the frustration really comes from, because it challenged the idea that if you do everything right, you'll be okay. For a lot of people, that promise is starting to break, and now that responsibility has shifted even more into individual. Learning, investing, multiple income stream, planning earlier, and taking more control. But the reality is not everyone had access to that knowledge early on. Not everyone was taught how to grow money and just how to save it. So when you see people nearing retirement and still unsure if they can stop working, it's not just the money issues, it's the timing issue as well, the education issues, and honestly a system issue as well, right? And that's why conversation like this matter, because the early people understand this shift, the better chance they have to adjust before it's too late.
Speaking of retirement,
there's an incredible woman. She works at McDonald's. What's your name, dear?
Beverly.
Beverly. She keeps this place so beautiful. I want to put this on TikTok, and I want to see how many people are going to wish that you would have a great day. And then when I come back in and see you next week, I'm going to show you all the results and all the comments. Is that okay?
Yes.
Well, God bless you. What was your name again?
Beverly.
And how long have you worked for McDonald's?
Going on 6 years.
You're amazing.
Well, thank you.
she's working right now 6 years.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so let's see what in the comments, right? So let's see what happened here in the comments. comment section here. We love you, Beverly. Maybe make a GoFundMe so she doesn't have to work anymore. Why is she working? Why don't you think she's working? Because this information, this education, saving, investing was probably never introduced to her earlier on. This is the result of a lack of planning, thinking that I'll do it later. Next thing you blink, you're Beverly. You're 20 years old, you're 30 years old, you're getting married, you have some kids. I'll do it later, thinking that your life is ever gonna get older. You blink, you're Beverly. If you don't wanna plan for your finances, that's your future, everybody. You'll be in Beverly's financial situation. So what do you wanna do? You wanna get disciplined now? Work hard at being disciplined in your finances now? Or do you wanna work hard at being disciplined in your finances when you're 70? Both are hard. What do you wanna do? Your choice. Because nobody's coming to rescue you, nobody's gonna come in to help you but you. Nobody cares more about your financial future than you.
If you're getting close to retirement, as I am, and you're like 61, 60, and you're thinking, well, I'm going to retire when I'm 65 or I'm 67 and make that extra money every month. Please don't do it. Try to find a way to retire as early as you possibly can. If it's 62 or 63, but don't wait till you're 65, 66, 67. But that extra couple $100 a month, it takes about 11 years to catch up. And by that time, you'll be in your late 70s, and who gives a shit by that, really? I mean, let's take the money now, maybe work a part-time job, pay down your bills. Do what you have to do to retire so you can enjoy some of your life. Retire and travel. Retire and spend time with your kids. Don't wait till you're 65 or 67. Retire early and enjoy the rest of your life. Life is too freaking short to wait until you're way too old to enjoy it.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, that's the reality of the retirement crisis in America right now. A lot of people did everything they were told, work hard, save, trust the system, and still ending up, unsure about their future. So the question is, what happened next, right? Are things going to change? Are more people going to get caught in this same situation? Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you feel prepared for your retirement, or does this worry you too? And if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more content like this. I got more videos coming soon where we break down real issues that actually affect everyday people. And yeah, as always, take care of yourself, stay smart with your money, and I'll see you guys in the next video.